Good evening and thank you for joining us. The shockwaves created by the latest discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves in Saskatchewan are being felt right across the country, including by Indigenous leaders here in the Northwest. 751 grave sites have been found by members of the Cowessess First Nation on the grounds of a former residential school near Regina.
Devastating, infuriating.
Wet'nuk's Saul Mamakwa is the only Ontario MPP who is a residential school survivor. He believes this latest discovery, along with the remains of 215 students recently found in BC, is still just the tip of the iceberg. Mamakwa says the road to healing will be long, and it starts with citizens of all backgrounds demanding a meaningful response from governments and the Catholic Church.
We need to be able to stand beside Indigenous people across the country and make sure that we put governments to account, and not only that, it's the churches too. I know the 751 unmarked graves that they found. There's no names attached to them. We need those records to be able to determine who they are, bring them home, but also how they died.
The Fort William First Nation is also in mourning. Last week, Chief Peter Collins demanded that the government investigate 3 possible burial sites in Fort William's traditional territory. Today, he called for public apologies from some high-profile figures on Canadian soil, apologies backed up by action.
The Queen needs to come here. The Pope needs to come here. The Prime Minister needs to come to all of our communities. That apology will go a long, long way, but saying sorry doesn't. What does that really mean? And I listen to politicians say we're sorry. Well, what does sorry really mean when you continue to find these little ones buried in unmarked graves? What can we do to make it better? We have to stand united. We have to work together. There's a lot of healing that has to go into this.
And we will have more on the tragic discovery in Saskatchewan a little later on in the news hour. Meanwhile, in the wake of this latest discovery, the Fort William First Nation has decided to cancel its Canada Day fireworks celebration. The city of Thunder Bay won't set off fireworks either, both out of respect for Indigenous communities and to discourage large gatherings that violate COVID-19 rules. A fireworks show off Mount McKay was planned for July 1st, similar to the pyrotechnics that happened there on New Year's Eve. But Collins says it doesn't feel appropriate to celebrate Canada Day this year. Fort William will instead shoot off those fireworks July 4th to honor the children that have been lost to residential schools.
We have nothing to celebrate with Canada on July 1st. The fireworks that we do light off on July 4th be a recognition of all those loved ones that were found in these unmarked graves, and showing that strong support for the communities, all of the communities that are impacted by residential school, all the survivors. We support them 100%.
I think this year on Canada Day, many of us, and I encourage our community to do the same, we'll be reflecting back on some of the tragedy and the discoveries recently related to the residential schools. It's an opportunity to educate ourselves, to find out more about the past, see how we can support reconciliation.
Instead, the City of Thunder Bay will offer a variety of virtual, self-guided Canada Day activities. Some of them require take-home activity kits. Participants need to register for one by Saturday and then pick them up on June 28th and 29th. More details are available on the City of Thunder Bay website. Ontario is moving into the next stage of its reopening plan. The province has announced it will enter Step 2 on June 30th, 2 days ahead of schedule. The move will see restrictions in a number of areas loosened. Colin DeMello has more.
Ontario is taking the next economic step sooner than expected. On Wednesday, June 30th, the province will enter Step 2, allowing a wide range of activity with restrictions.
People are very excited to be able to get haircuts again. You can visit outdoor amusement parks and water parks. For the first time in a long time, you can gather indoors with up to 5 people, not necessarily from your household.
Here's what can resume next Wednesday. Gatherings will be expanded, 25 outdoor, 5 indoors. Personal care services, including hair salons, can open with 25% capacity. Retail capacity is being expanded, 50% for essential, 25% for non-essential. Indoor religious services can resume, including weddings and funerals with 25% max. And other activities can resume as well, like public libraries and outdoor amusement parks with 25% capacity. And spectators can return to outdoor concerts and outdoor sporting events with 25% capacity. But key questions like what can vaccinated people do and will masks still be a requirement at outdoor events or gatherings are still under consideration.
What does it mean for you individually? And what does it mean for a population immunity or community immunity, if you may? And we're hoping to have some guidance documents out on that fairly soon.
But as the economic taps are slowly turned on, the restrictions will linger, limiting the revenue for business owners. Critics say additional support from the government is necessary.
To know that there are still businesses worried that they're not going to make it to their opening day, or they're not going to make it much further once the opening day occurs is really problematic. It shouldn't be that way here in Ontario.
And while Step 2 is being sped up, the province is facing questions about Step 3. Ontario has already met the vaccination targets for the final reopening, but the government says it still wants to wait approximately 21 days. Now the incoming Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, shares the same cautious view as his predecessor.
As Dr. Williams said, we have to really go slow and steady in the face of the Delta strain becoming a dominant strain within Ontario.
It is unclear when all of the capacity limits will be lifted.
COVID-19 cases in the Thunder Bay district have ticked back up into double digits as the health unit reported 3 new infections today. 1 is in a First Nations community, while 2 come from elsewhere in the district. None of the exposure sources are known at this time. Now, the total pandemic case count has now risen to 3,334, and there are 10 active cases. That's 1 more than yesterday. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu is looking at Ontario's provincial reopening through a cautious lens, noting the difficulties other countries have had with early openings. We also spoke to Hajdu today about why vaccine passports are taking so long. Corey Nordstrom has that story.
As Ontario quickens its pace towards Step 2 of reopening, it needs to do so with a watchful eye on the data, according to the country's health minister. Patty Hajdu says outbreaks need to be managed swiftly and vaccines need to go into arms as quick as possible, but notes the risk that come with more freedoms.
I'll just point to the UK. They're in deep trouble again, and they're trying really quickly to vaccinate teenagers. Luckily, we've already been vaccinating 12 and up, so we'll have to keep, like I said, really careful watch on things.
Many Canadians are also eager to begin traveling abroad as cases of COVID-19 continue to dwindle. But any opening of the border is likely to require a form of vaccine passports. Currently, the ArriveCan app is the main identifier for border services, but some view the concrete rollout of vaccine passports as delayed, and Hajdu explains why.
The Federation and data sharing makes it that more complex. The federal government doesn't have access or easy access to health data at all. The second thing is the world is a little uncertain still about what this will look like. There are lots of people in working groups with different ideas of how to do this, and we're trying to make sure we align with the international work that's happening in this space.
But not everyone has a cell phone or is tech savvy enough to download an app fitted with the necessary medical information to cross the border.
ArriveCan is mandatory for most people, but we'll always have exceptions, people that might have physical disabilities or other kinds of limitations that prevent them from being able to use the technology. And our goal is to get everybody into this digital space, not just because it's easier and more reliable, but because of the speed of entry into Canada.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Care over enforcement. That's the call coming from the grassroots anti-racism group Not One More Death. A rally was staged outside City Hall last night, calling for security guards there to be replaced with grandmothers. It comes 2 months after pictures showing security staff photographing 2 men slumped over a bench outside the municipal building drew condemnation online. Ryan Benazzo has more.
The irony wasn't lost on the 4 speakers. In front of City Hall, with a Wake the Giant sticker on its window promising a welcoming environment for Indigenous people, the grandmothers of varied backgrounds spoke out against hired security staff who they insist target Indigenous people.
Security that is housed here, we're taking pictures of somebody that was passed out to people that were on a bench.
The grassroots anti-racism group Not One More Death staged the event called Tea with Kokum, that's grandmother in Cree, in support of its call for the city to replace the security guards with, yes, grandmothers.
Some will consider this to be a radical idea, but the group says it's about sparking discussion and finding ways to provide care rather than enforcement outside of City Hall.
This is a public space, so we're wanting to just kind of turn it into a more warm and caring space to make sure that people's needs are being met.
DeRosier says the time is now, especially for non-Indigenous people, to stand up and demand changes to societal norms and systems that have been used to oppress racialized communities for generations.
We've just uncovered and unearthed babies and children from a residential school. And what's happened here in Thunder Bay with the death of children in our waters. You know, like, when is it enough? You know, to say that I shouldn't have to be the one that has to keep showing up.
Sometimes only when there is really extreme crisis do you actually get like this type of creativity or the openness from officials and people with power to actually begin to rethink the way things are structured.
That change is necessary, say the grandmothers, to ensure a more equitable future for younger generations.
I don't like to see them to be like what we went through. Maybe they should have a better life.
Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
Thunder Bay Police are reporting a major drug bust along with the seizure of cash and a handgun. A search warrant was executed yesterday evening at a residence on Maplewood Street South. The search of the home resulted in police finding a large quantity of cocaine with a street value of about $145,000 and $30,000 in cash. Police also found paraphernalia consistent with drug trafficking, a loaded handgun with a high-capacity magazine, and a bag of ammunition. 2 men from Toronto, aged 26 and 23, and 2 women from Thunder Bay, aged 43 and 49, face numerous charges, including drug trafficking and possession of a prohibited weapon. A violent windstorm in the Dryden-Sioux Lookout area caused major damage and numerous power outages last night. This video posted to Facebook shows the Sunset Inn in Sioux Lookout just minutes after a portion of the roof was torn off due to strong winds. Fortunately, there were no reported injuries. Hydro One had hundreds of customers without power, and repairs were continuing all day today. Meanwhile, at Eagle Lake near Dryden, this pontoon boat was flipped out of the water and onto another boat. The owner believes it was due to a microburst. And in Oxdrift, this barn was completely destroyed by the strong winds during the storm, but thankfully there, everyone was okay as well. Local school boards have wrapped up the most difficult school year to date due to COVID-19. Today and tomorrow, students at both elementary and high schools will be coming by to pick up anything left behind and to return school devices. Avery McCrae spoke to the heads of the Lakehead and Catholic school boards and files this report.
The last day of school had a much different feel than when students first stepped back into the classrooms in September. The last 4 months saw Thunder Bay students learning remotely through online classes, but they're getting one last chance to return to their schools to pick up old items and return school devices.
Probably the most important piece, it gives families an opportunity and kids an opportunity to interact with their teachers and staff, and just to close off the year with that interaction and to say basically their goodbyes.
Everyone's relieved that we've finally made it to this stage. There's a lot of questions yet that have not been answered.
Faculty and families alike will have to wait until the province releases its full fall school plans in July. It is assumed students will be returning to the classroom come September, but it's still unclear what the protocols will entail. But after the year that was, McCrae says he has full faith no matter how it looks, the school community will be able to handle it.
The resilience that people have demonstrated in dealing with a situation that is very, very complex.
You just keep moving along and you persevere and be prepared that things could easily change at any moment.
No one could have guessed how the last 16 months would have gone due to the pandemic and all the challenges it presented. But the board directors have a simple message to all those who had their lives flipped upside down with the many changes in school since March 2020. Thank you.
Our families, our students, and our staff are enduring a very difficult year, and I just want to thank them and congratulate them for the work that they've done to end the school year on a positive note.
We feel we've made the best of a very, very challenging situation, and they truly have been unprecedented challenges that we faced, and I think we've succeeded.
Avery McCrae, TBT News.
The city's popular RibFest event will be back in Thunder Bay this summer, and again, it'll be using the drive-through system for the second year in a row. But this time, it'll be at a new location. Ribs Royal and Dinosaur Smokehouse will be back this year as the guest ribbers, with Daytona's being the new local entry. The event is a fundraiser for Our Kids Count and has been held at the CLE grounds for the past 2 years. But officials at the CLE wanted to focus on the vaccination clinics this summer, so RibFest is being moved to the east parking lot at Lakehead University. Event organizer Daniel Trevisanuto with Halfway Motors says having the event at LU will actually provide more room and decrease the backlog.
What the drive-in allows is one safe, controlled line. Everyone's in your own vehicle, and that's a really big positive. You know, the other thing we looked at is weather conditions. If it's raining, you can still come because you'll be in the comfort of your own car. If it's 35 degrees outside, you don't have to worry about it. You'll be in your car with the air conditioning. You know, you don't have to worry about the music because ideally you'll be able to pick your own. So we started looking at all the positives we'll be able to bank on with the drive-in.
RibFest is set to run from August 26th to the 29th. And after missing a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a local music festival is making its return to Thunder Bay. Wake the Giant was held first back in September of 2019 as a welcoming event for Indigenous students and attracted a crowd of about 2,000 people to Marina Park. The 2020 concert had to be canceled, but the festival has returned with a big line of performers. This year, music fans will be seeing Jessie Reyez, Third Eye Blind, and Loud Luxury headlining the event. The scheduled date is Saturday, September 18th, but organizers have been making backup plans in case of pandemic problems.
You know, we're working with our team and our leadership and the health unit to ensure that we do have a contingency plan, and we're hoping to not have to take option B, but we will be ready, you know, if that is the route that we're forced to take.
Yeah, so we are continuing to follow the health and safety guidelines from the province of Ontario, and we're fairly confident moving forward the way things have been looking that this should be a go.
Tickets for the event have gone on sale and can be purchased on the Wake the Giant website.
Great, very exciting and attracting more phenomenal artists. That makes it even more fun for sure.